Thank you, everybody. As mentioned, I'm Chris Lynam. I'm the Director General of the National Cybercrime Coordination Centre and the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre at the RCMP. It's great to be back in Fredericton. I spoke at this event a couple of years ago. On top of that, in the early part of my professional career, I did some of my Army training not too far from here. So it's much nicer to come back now than when I did some of that training. So great to be back in Fredericton. Okay, so I'm going to cover a few things. What I would say is, and Rajiv talked about some of these, so I'll go through quickly. Really, from our perspective on the law enforcement side of things, we continue to see a range of type of attacks. I've just put a few headlines here that I pulled from not these in the last 6 months to a year, if not sooner. I'll highlight a couple of themes in here, which I'll touch on. There's two or three headlines in here. One is about cybercrime as a service. That is what is really driving the ecosystem, which unfortunately makes it easier for people with less technical experience to conduct cybercrime. The other is just the prevalence of credentials that have been stolen that are now out there. And we've already seen a couple of themes, whether it was from MasterCard or Rajiv talked about like steal now and decrypt later. That is driving a lot of what we're seeing. And then finally, I'll have one or two other slides where just artificial intelligence and how that is being used by cyber criminals. It's full game on now. Year ago it was sort of like, oh, we're maybe seeing early indications and what have you. No, now it is being used in a really prevalent way. Just a couple of headlines more locally here. Whenever I do presentations, I really try and ground what we see to the local environment. So, all of Atlantic Canada facing various types of attacks, impacting different types of sectors. So in terms of the threat environment, we see everything from state actors. Here, on the cybercrime side of things, you see North Korea, which is arguably the world's biggest bank robbers. They figured out ways to hack into banks, go after cryptocurrency. I think folks are quite familiar with how they run a very sophisticated operation of North Korean state employees figuring out ways to get hired as primarily IT developers in the private sector. This is in North America and Europe. This has been covered pretty extensively, but I can tell you, like, this is happening in Canada, and they are very good at it. And we need to do more to address this. We're continue to face highly adapted adversaries. Rajiv talked about this a little bit, a joint advisory or co-branded product on Scattered Spider. Very interesting group, a lot of young people in this. They are financially motivated, but they also do it for other reasons. And their social engineering skills are incredible. So they figure ways to talk their way into company. And then once they're in, they're able to cause a lot of havoc. Rajiv talked about a little bit about the malicious campaign. Just to give you an example of like just the prevalence and the diversity of what we see, like high profile folks in the government or private sector being targeted with very sophisticated type of campaigns. The other thing I'll just mention is cyber fraud is out of control. It is everywhere, whether it's business email compromise, authorized push payments, that sort of thing. We often talk about the impact of ransomware on the country as a whole. Absolutely very impactful. The economic losses for business email compromise, we think, is higher than ransomware. And then at the individual level, you see just this prevalence. Everybody here has probably seen it, and then all your family members, friends, like this is what people talk about, just how they get so many scams hitting them. And a lot of it is, has a cryptocurrency or investment theme. And one of the challenges is this is advertised or promoted or talked about on so many of the social media and tech platforms. Just quickly, AI, as I mentioned, it's not sort of when it's going to be used. It is now full on being used by cyber criminals, whether that is using LLMs to help design code or to create very sophisticated social engineering emails and what have you. It is, you know, the acceleration has really happened. There's now platforms like Ghost GPT or Escape that you can go on and try and, it's now LLM cybercrime as a service. So just really accelerating what the cyber criminals were trying to do. I do worry we're actually only seeing the real start of it. Like they're almost just dabbling in it, but if AI can replicate itself to do some malware like that, that does not sound like a good thing to me. And I'll give you an example here, and I'll talk about some success stories in the latter part of the presentation. Is Canada specifically being targeted? So LabHost, this was a phishing as a service platform that Jennifer mentioned. And what this LabHost platform offered was for a low monthly fee of either $179 or $249 for the premium package, you could, almost anybody could create very realistic bank login pages, other login pages to capture credentials. And for the premium price, they had a way to bypass multi-factor authentication. You can see here in the circle here, these, the logos of most of Canada's major financial institutions being targeted, Interact as well. And the interesting thing, this wasn't on the dark web. This was available very openly. This is the Telegram channel here. The good folks at LabHost administrators just telling all the users that the platform's going to be down, their help desk, please don't use it at a certain period. Over 5,000 people subscribe to this channel. So this is the Canadian channel, specifically targeting Canadian victims. And almost 9,000 people saw that post. Another thing related to the cyber fraud, I'll highlight it because it is a truly tragic situation, is the scam compounds operating mostly out of Southeast Asia, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar in particular. Hundreds of thousands of people have been convinced or lured to get employment in these scam compounds. Maybe a job as a casino. They thought they were going to a job as a casino, and then they're not allowed to leave. And then in these compounds at an industrial scale, they run operations to go out and try and victimize, Westerners and a whole bunch of countries. Very lucrative. The challenge is, from a law enforcement perspective and even other perspectives, trying to work with the Cambodians, or Myanmar authorities. Like it's very challenging. And there are $1 billion of being stolen from Western countries primarily as a result of this scam compound issue. Okay, getting down to brass tacks and the financial impacts. So as mentioned, I lead the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. We run a contact center where people either call in or report online when they're victimized. And in 2024, we had almost $650 million reported in being stolen from their accounts, or they paid a ransom, or they transferred money to a fraudster. The real eye-opening part of this data, I would say, is that we only think that represents 5 to 10% of true losses. We've got a couple of different data points that we think that stands up. So if you times that just by 10, that's $6.5 billion in direct losses. That's not counting business interruptions, the costs to rebuild networks and what have you. Like that is a significant part of the country's GDP being siphoned off. That in these days we probably can't afford. So how do we address this, or how do we go about from a law enforcement perspective and with others? Is really we've adopted this team sport approach. We try and get as many law enforcement folks, private sector, other government entities, nonprofit on the team, and figure out what different ways to go after the cyber criminals and reduce the impacts on Canadians. And I'll give you an example of how our methodology has evolved in the last little while. So at the NC3, we operate under, we call 4 lines of effort to reduce the impact of cybercrime. The first is prevent, second is interventions, third is pursue, and then fourth is build. So under the prevent, a lot of that is the traditional, help people be more secure online. We work with the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity very closely on that. But increasingly, what we're trying to do under this pillar is prevent or deter primarily young Canadians from becoming cyber criminals. It is, as I mentioned, it's never been easier to go down a path. It starts very young, as in the 10 to 12 age. It's often driven by the online video gaming community where kids just get sucked into this world very easily, and before they know it, they're doing something illegal. And so we're trying to do some work to really try and engage those folks and have them not go down that path. And I've got an example of how we're doing that. The second is where we can, we try to intervene at the, right before the onset, where we get information shared or intelligence shared from our law enforcement partners internationally or in the country, and we reach out to that potential victim and say you're under attack. We also do where if a victim is wired money to us or wired money to a bad guy, we'll try and help them get that money. We've got a network internationally of law enforcement and with banks where we can sometimes get that transaction frozen so they can recover their money. Sometimes we've been able to get decryption tools into the hands of victims for ransomware, and they're able to decrypt their data or their network and then not pay the ransom. We've had some significant success there. Under the pursue approach, this is where we go after the cyber criminals or work with a bunch of partners to do it in a very joint, sequenced way. Ideally, someone's going to get handcuffs put on them, but we know often where they operate from, that's not going to be the case. So then it's about seizing their infrastructure, seizing their cryptocurrency accounts, disrupting or degrading their efforts. Sometimes it's about discrediting what they do. Again, they operate cybercrime as a service, as a business. So how can we create an effect that makes other cyber criminals not want to use that service? And I've got some examples of that. And then finally, the build phase is where we work with other law enforcement partners in Canada and other parts of the RCMP to try and upskill what everyone's doing. Frankly, there hasn't been enough investment in law enforcement to deal with this. There's been some, which is great, but it's not matching where the threats are going. So that just gives you a sense of the operating environment and the approach we use. I'll give you some examples now of how we conduct our operations. So the pursue, again, it's about that joint sequence operations to go after the cyber criminals, and we do it domestically as much integrated as possible, but really in an international manner as well. A great example of that was Operation Cookie Monster in April 2023. This was a joint operation against the Genesis marketplace. What Genesis offered for sale was very simply access to people's online accounts. So that ranged from email, Amazon banking accounts, just even business access. And they had technology that allowed, when you bought that access, it looked like you were logging in as the owner of that account. And it was offered for very cheap prices, a couple of dollars. At one point on this Genesis site, there was over 1.5 million of these bots, which were different accounts for sale, and a huge number of Canadian users using this site. So there was a takedown of the Genesis marketplace by some countries led by the FBI. And then here in Canada, we led an operation where we went after the users on a day of action in April 2023. There were 79 different police actions across the country. So that ranged from police officers going to people's door, arresting them, executing search warrants. Here's just some examples. A big concentration in the Quebec region. Those are 3 different Quebec-based police services represented. We work close with the FBI. The FBI have a cyber dog. It's a dog that can actually sniff a compound in all electronics. So if a USB key is hidden or a device in a wall, the dog can find it. So if you'll remember one thing from my presentation today, it's the FBI have a cyber dog. We've got a couple here now in Canada, but just an example of, like, you got to have new capabilities to figure out what's going on. Quick, another good example, Operation CRONOS. So this was an operation against the Lockbit ransomware as a service group. It was the most impactful ransomware hitting the planet. Really impactful here in Canada. They had such allure, like a cult-like status. One of their leaders at one point had said, "Hey, anybody who goes out and gets a tattoo of the Lockbit brand will pay $1,000." They had people sign up in minutes for this. So, maybe talk about like bad life choices there. So beginning in February 2024, 10 countries came together, seized a whole bunch of the Lockbit infrastructure, put up a splash page to say, hey, these countries have come after you. They put up a whole bunch of other actions that helped discredit what Lockbit was doing. Eventually they actually unmasked the person who ran the organization, a Russian-based guy, so they couldn't put handcuffs on him, but he was also sanctioned by some countries. Here in Canada, we had a component where an affiliate, so the people who used the malware and actually conducted the cyber attacks, an individual lived north of Toronto. We worked with the Ontario Provincial Police, FBI, and others. He was arrested, sentenced. He's been subsequently extradited to the U.S. I think he'll face significant jail time there. And then, just even part of this combined operation, the National Crime Agency was not afraid to say, hey, we have your online ID of the affiliates, and we're going to keep coming after you. And then one other more recent operation known as Project Nova. So what this was the operations to go after that lab host platform. There was a combined international effort to seize the infrastructure, and led by the UK Met Police. And then here in Canada, we led some operations. I'm going to see if this comes up because I want to use this as an example of just how simple it was to use Lockbit. We'll see if this works.
How to install a page on your VPS in a couple easy steps. First, you need to buy a VPS that has one of our supported operating systems. After buying your VPS, make sure you have the info ready. Go to Setup. Add a new server. Select your desired scam page. Fill in your VPS info that you have been provided. Set the antibot settings accordingly to your spamming. Take advantage of our wide range of customization available for your page. Scroll down and click Save to begin the installation. Installation has started. Wait for status to say active. This should take around 5 minutes. If the installation takes more than 10 minutes, don't hesitate to message support so we can assist you in figuring out what's going on. Done. Your page has installed and you're ready to spam. Make sure to check that it works before starting your spam. Stay safe and good spamming.
So there you go. Very, very simple. Stay safe and happy spamming, right? So Project Nova, unfortunately, when all that data was seized behind LabHost, we were able to get a copy of that data, and then we started analyzing it. This was a incredibly impactful platform. We think there was almost 1 million Canadians victimized by this. So that's someone who put their credentials. That's not just click on the link, that's someone who put their credentials into the pages, the fake pages, and impacted all parts of the country. A great part of this operation is we worked very closely with a bunch of private sector organizations, particularly the financial institutions. So ahead of time, we told them we were going to do this, and then when we got the victimization data sorted, we proactively shared it with them. And then they went and compared it to what they had from maybe their customer reporting it. And it led to this really awesome, operational collaboration. And sorry, from a victimization from a dollar loss, we think it's in the neighborhood of several $100 million. That's just one platform. Okay, and I'm gonna close off here because I think I'm about 3 minutes out. On the intervention pillar, I mentioned that we often get information that someone's under attack. We reach out to them. We work with the Canadian Center for Cybersecurity, and maybe they've already done it, so we do that as a first step. But if not, we'll reach out. And very highly impactful. In some cases, we know in 1 year we had a banner year of saving a lot of corporations from not paying ransom and not losing money due to business interruptions. So I talked about that prevent piece. What I wanted to give you an example of what we did in Nova was how do we directly engage potential cyber offenders or people who've just started maybe dabbling in cybercrime. And what we did was we did a Google Ads campaign. So first step was we created a web page that talked about phishing and phishing as a service, why it's illegal, what are the criminal code offenses, how it can ruin your life. And if you're a tech savvy person, here's some options for how you might use your skills for good. And then we advertised it. So what it would mean is anybody using Google in Canada, if they typed in some keywords, they would have got an impression that would look something like this. Ideally, it would be at the top of the list. They would, ideally, they would click on the link. But even if they didn't, right in their face is, holy crap, what I may be looking to do is illegal. And hopefully that will divert them or encourage them not to go down that path. We did this for about a month. Here's the stats for 2 weeks. We had over 10,000 impressions. We had about 1,200 people click through, which is actually is pretty good click-through rate. But again, we were more, that impression was the most important piece. And it only cost us $2,200. Even if like one of those people were going to become a hardened cyber criminal, we think for $2,000, like that's a pretty good return on investment. And this slide I'll build, and I won't really talk to you about it. It just covers our different operations since we've been in existence since 2020 and operationally shortly after that. And really it covers the landscape of everything from that pursue, going after cyber criminals, to interventions where we helped get decryption keys into people's hands, Google Ads. Sometimes we worked primarily from a technical assistance perspective. And it just continues. So we think we've got a formula with those 4 lines of effort that can make a real difference. Our challenge now is the threat environment continues to increase, and we've only got limited resources. And as Trisha Getty's talked about, same time we gotta realize we're probably gonna have to do more with less. But yeah, so anyways, just to give you a snapshot of what we do. And how really important it is to have that team sport approach of working with as many partners in the private sector, academia, nonprofit, and public sector as we can. So I will stop there.